Tonight, we're going to talk about this conversation is going to be for you if you feel like you have anxiety, if you're out of a toxic or narcissistic relationship and you have anxiety about being without the person. Um, or if you're still in the toxic or narcissistic relationship, but you feel like if I leave, I'm going to you have anxiety about leaving, right? You don't feel comfortable within it. The thought alone gives you anxiety. So if that sounds like something that you are dealing with, this conversation tonight is for you. So what I've done actually is I responded to a post that I saw, and it's something that there's sometimes you see posts after being in this field for a while and working with people, you realize there's a trend where there's some common issues that people deal with. So this was one that definitely stood out to me, and I'm going to read that, and we're going to jump into it. We are going to learn how to deal with that anxiety, whether you're in the relationship still and you want to leave, but you feel anxious about leaving, or you are out of the toxic or narcissistic relationship, but you feel anxiety because you have left, because that person is no longer in your life in the way that they were before. Okay. Before we go into that, for those of you who are new to me, I see I have some new people here. My name is Naila Abdullah. I'm a toxic relationship coach. My background is in the mental health field, mental health therapist, mental health counselor. But I pivoted into toxic relationship coaching primarily because of my own personal experiences with toxic and narcissistic relationships. I was in a narcissistic relationship for what I consider to be narcissistic relationship for 10 years. And I also was able to overcome and heal after that, as well as narcissistic family relationships. So by no choice of mine, I have great long-term experience with these type of people, but more importantly, I have been able to master the ability to get out of the situation, to be able to heal from it, right? And healing is sometimes a confusing word. So when you hear the word healing, what I mean by that is that you are no longer dealing with the emotional pain. You are no longer dealing with the emotional tugging of the situation. You are no longer governing your life and making decisions based on that experience. And you have evolved, you have transformed into a person where you are no longer affected by these type of people. You know how to handle these type of people. They are there, they are here to stay, but you at least you want to get to a place where they don't affect you in the same way. You can see the red flags, you can spot the red flags, and you know how to deal with them, right? I won't say you're never triggered, but you are minimally triggered. We're human, right? So it doesn't mean that for the rest of your life, you will never ever be triggered again. That's unrealistic. But if you are triggered and you are healed, you are able to identify that and you are able to manage that trigger, and it doesn't consume you in the way that it would if you were not able to heal. So that is my story. That is what I have been through. And that is what made me become passionate about this, is because I realized there's an ongoing trend, an ongoing, situation of women. And a lot of times these women have a lot in common where they are, good women. And let me say this for the men that catch this replay, also men. I'm not saying only, men can be toxic or narcissistic. It definitely goes both ways, but I am typically speaking to women as I'm a woman and relate to women, and that's typically who I serve. But it's an ongoing situation, and most times these women have a lot in common where they're very kind, very caring, very ambitious, very successful. Typically actually quite assertive women. So a lot of times people can't understand, like, how does a woman like you get caught up in a situation like this? Like, you typically don't take nonsense from anyone. How did you manage to deal with this for so long? So I realized there was a trend, and I just been able to dedicate my efforts into working with women like this, and I've been able to get women the same results that I've gotten myself, which is to be able to heal and rebuild themselves and break the cycle of toxic and narcissistic relationships. Because that's also something I realize, is that women, some of these women are repeating the pattern, right? So what's happening is that women are getting out of the relationship. They feel like they're healed because maybe they've been able to move on to a certain extent, or they're distracted with other things. However, they're still making some of the same decisions and ending back up in some of the same relationships. So that is who I am. That is what I do. And as I'm speaking about identifying red flags, for those of you who are new to me, I do have a Wednesday night live masterclass every Wednesday night called Wisdom Wednesdays. We have different topics every week. And tomorrow night we actually have a class about identifying red flags and avoiding toxic relationships. So if you are someone that is terrified, you're out of a toxic or narcissistic relationship, but you're terrified about falling back into another relationship like that again, you just don't trust yourself, you feel like, what if it happens again? I don't know what to look for. This is the class for you. So if you are interested, go ahead. You can either put a 1 here, or you can DM me the word class, and I will gladly send you that link. I also have the link in my bio if you happen to stop over there. So let's jump into this. So this post is very short. I just summarized it. The person posts, "Why did I go back so many times?" Because of anxiety. She went back because of anxiety. She kept going back to the relationship because of the anxiety. But he gives me more anxiety. So I'm stuck with anxiety with or without him, right? So it sounds like she is stuck between a rock and a hard place. She has anxiety when she's with him, and she has anxiety when she's not with him. So she keeps going back, right? So I'm going to talk about how you can approach this and from what angle you can approach this. So the first angle is a very obvious angle, and what I call the Google way. Not that it's a bad way, but it's a solution that you can easily get on Google, which is the practical way, right? So implementing different coping strategies. So if you feel anxious, if you Google right now what to do with anxiety, you will come up with, go for a walk, exercise, yoga, learn some deep breathing techniques, right? All of these things are good things. If on a spiritual level, prayer, all of these things are good. There's nothing wrong with that. But I do consider them somewhat of a Band-Aid, right? So not a Band-Aid as in they're not good options, but it's like a triage, right? So if you get into an accident, God forbid, and you go into the clinic or the hospital, they're going to quickly patch you up just to keep you stable, right? But it doesn't mean that you still might not need further testing or x-rays or treatment down the line, right? So there's still some deeper level work that needs to be done. The Band-Aids is going to help you in the moment, but then what do you do with the anxiety as it keeps resurfacing? Because it will. So that is what I want to equip you with tonight. So if this is speaking to you, get a pen and paper, because this is what they call the work, right? You always hear people say, you need to do the work. Are you ready to do the work? This is what the work is, right? And this is sometimes, unfortunately, what people are not comfortable doing, right? And sometimes they reach out for extra support around this, or they're willing to do it themselves. But this is where the work comes in. So we want to get to the root of the anxiety. So we're not talking about general anxiety. We're talking about anxiety around a toxic or narcissistic relationship. So what we're going to do is we're going to reverse engineer this, right? So if you think about anxiety, right, it's what you feel. But to get to your feeling, your thoughts impact what you feel. So whatever you're thinking affects the way you feel, right? You think happy thoughts, you feel good. You think scary thoughts, you feel bad. I mean, that sounds very simple, but that's pretty much, how it works. There is a connection. So our thoughts impact what we feel. Now, our perspective on our experiences affects our thoughts. So we have perspective, thoughts, feeling, and that feeling is anxiety. So if we reverse engineer that, we go from feeling anxious to looking at our thoughts. What are we thinking? What we think is based on our perspective of our experiences, right? So some of the questions you want to ask yourself when you are looking at your perspective is, what were your experiences, right? So again, this is where the work comes in. This is what I do with clients. This is what professionals do with clients. This is what you can also do with yourself. You can get your journal out, because I'm a strong believer in pen and paper to break this down, right? So what are your experiences? What is your perspective on your experiences? What are the messages that you were getting in the relationship? What are some of the things that this toxic or narcissistic partner was telling you, right? What are the messages there? And what is your perspective on the message, right? And perspective is everything, because you and I can experience the same exact thing, but we perceive it differently, right? We can perceive it completely differently, and that would determine how we feel about the situation, right? Because our perspectives are different. You want to look at your belief system. You know, what belief system did I create around my perception about the experience? I know this is a mouthful. Write it down. I'm going to give you an example to break it down for you. But this is where you get to the root of the anxiety. Okay? If you really want to get back control of your life, because they like you anxious now. Toxic and narcissistic people, they want you to be anxious. When you are anxious, you are easy to control, and that is their primary motive, is to be able to control you for their own benefit, for their own ego. So they want you anxious. So if you're really serious about getting back control over you, and this is whether you're in the relationship still or out of it, you want to be able to dismantle this anxiety and get back control over who you are. So again, we're talking about now your belief system, right? What belief system? So as I said, I'm going to give you an example because that's how we work best. Oops, sorry. So an example is, I know of a case where she's a woman now. However, she moved to the U.S. As a child from another country. And that move was a culture shock for her, to the point where it affected her childhood, different parts of her being in school. When they moved to the U.S., they ended up moving into a ghetto, into an urban community where there was drugs and crime and so forth. So that also affected her, coming from another country where she was not used to that. And of course, like most of us, there were, family situations and challenges that came up, and she was able to overcome all of this. One thing about her, though, is that she was always very focused on building a stable life for herself. She was always very focused on her career, and she picked a career path that was an uncommon career path, where it involved many years of college and higher education. Now, with all of what she's been through, she was still able to accomplish her goal. She ended up getting married and having children, and just being able to create, that stable life that she wanted for herself with her career and her family. Moving to a different state and creating that, and buying a house, and just creating the life that she had envisioned for herself. Unfortunately, she married the wrong person. She married someone that she identified as a narcissist. And based on the behavior, I too identify them as a narcissist. Now, in this example, if this woman experienced anxiety, again, going back to the formula I just spoke about of reverse engineering it, is if she has anxiety, right? We're talking about feeling. We need to go to the thoughts. What are her thoughts that's giving her anxiety? Her thoughts were, I'm not good enough. Where was that coming from? That was coming from, and now we're going back up to perspective, that was coming from a core belief that she developed, that she started living by, based on the verbal abuse that the narcissistic husband was inflicting on her, right? Criticizing her for everything. Criticizing her that she was not raising the kids properly, criticizing her that she was not making good decisions in the house, criticizing her for everything, right? And this is something you will notice with narcissists and toxic manipulative people, is that they want people who are ambitious. They want people who are successful. They want people who are go-getters. And there will be a period where they praise you for it, where they even seem to be supporting you. They're doing that because they need your status. They need to ride that wave with you. They need to benefit from your good decisions. Now, here's the flip side, and this is the part that a lot of people cannot fathom, and why they continue to stick around and allow themselves to be accessible to the toxic or narcissistic person. On the flip side, they will be jealous of you. So the same characteristics, the same ambition, the same accomplishments, everything about you that they praise you for and they even supported you in to help you get there, they're also envious of you, and they will try to sabotage you for it, right? And that is what was happening in this case. This partner was, my light went off. This partner was enjoying the benefits of the life that she created for them. However, he started to become critical and criticizing her for every little thing. I mean, they will find in my situation with my ex-partner, I would be criticized for drinking a protein shake and not going to the gym. How crazy is that? That's another story for another day. But they will find every little thing to criticize you for, right? So again, going back to this particular case, her feeling was she was feeling anxious, right? Looking at the thoughts, I'm not good enough, I don't make good decisions, I'm just not capable of running my life. That's basically how he started to make her feel. The perspective she had on her experience was that he was right, that what he was saying was true. Now, to dismantle the anxiety and to get back control over you, you need to now look at the evidence to change your perspective. The evidence to support what he said, there is no evidence. There is no evidence. The evidence says actually that she is a strong person, that she does make good decisions. Despite the challenges that she went throughout her life, she was still able to make a good life, not only for her, but for him and for her kids. So you need to look at the evidence. You need to challenge the core belief that you are living by, because it's not coming from you. It's coming from them. And that is why it's so important to go no contact. For those of you who don't know what going no contact means, when you end the relationship, to cut off all contact. Not even a Christmas card, not even a Christmas text, not even oh, it was a storm and I heard it hit your area. Are you okay? Nada, nothing. Because any word that comes out of their mouth, there is always an underlying motive. And when you are not in a healed space, when you are working on your healing, you cannot afford to allow any little bit of influence from them. Because there's never just I'm just calling to check. I'm just texting to check. Yeah, you're checking all right. You're checking to see if you can still access me. You're checking to see if you can still control me. This is why it's so important to completely go no contact, because as you are working on reframing your perspective on who you are and your capabilities, they will come in and sabotage that, right? So this is the reverse engineering. This is the work that we talk about. And this is the work sometimes that is hard to do on your own. And that is where you have the option to ask for extra support and get services, because this work can be difficult. And this is not something that you do one time and voila, my perspective has changed and I feel great now. There's never any more anxiety. No, this takes constant practicing. Basically, the message from this conversation tonight is that you need to rewire the way you think. You need to rewire your thoughts in order to rewire your experiences, to have a different experience and to have new feelings. I hope that this was beneficial for you. Let me just check the comments here. Hello, Keith. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you for sharing this info. Very super informative. My pleasure. Oh, thank you, Keith. Thank you. Keith Girls. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions around this? Can anyone relate to this particular topic of feeling anxious about leaving the relationship, or feeling anxious about being out of it already, or you're still in the toxic or narcissistic relationship, but you feel anxious about getting out of it? Anyone experiencing that right now? Or if you have in the past? I'm a big believer in results. And that doesn't mean that you have to rush healing and rush getting over it. No, but you have to be aware of the distraction. And there's so many distractions out there. I always say it's so great that we live in this era where there's so much information out there that we can research, even what narcissism is. I mean, 10 years ago, I don't think the average person even knew what that was, right? There's so much information out there, but what that does do is it keeps some people stuck, because they get so caught up in what you call analysis paralysis, that you are analyzing everything, right? But you're paralyzed in the healing process. And that's because you're more focused on them than you are on you. So Dealing with the anxiety, you're not going to be able to do that if you are constantly looking at what they're doing wrong, and why are they doing what they're doing, and how did they become this way. Those are all valid questions, don't get me wrong. It's okay to ask that, and it does help to understand some of it, right? Because then you start to feel like, okay, I'm not crazy, because that's how these type of people make you feel. But it cannot stop there. You have to bring it back to you, because I know for me, I said I don't want this to be my story. I don't want to be researching this, for the next 5 years. I don't want this to be my conversation all the time. I don't want this to be something that I have to go on social media for all the time, right? I want this to be a phase in my life. I want this to be a period. I want this to be a chapter, but I don't want this to be permanent. All right, so I don't see any questions or comments. If anything comes up, or if you watch this on the replay, um, definitely feel free to comment underneath, or if you want to keep it more private and send me a DM if you have any questions or comments, feel free. As a reminder, as I said, I do have every Wednesday night we have live master classes where we discuss different topics. This coming Wednesday we are discussing how to identify red flags of toxic or narcissistic people, and how to avoid toxic relationships altogether. So if you are someone that has been in a toxic relationship and you are terrified about falling back into another relationship like that again, you're welcome, Rosa. My pleasure. Definitely go ahead and register for that class. That is a Zoom call. It's a live coaching call. So it's a bit more intimate than what you're seeing here tonight. Where you also have the ability to have live Q&A, where you get live answers from me for any questions you have, as well as you're also able, of course, to interact with the other people on the call. So it's definitely very beneficial. It's Wisdom Wednesdays, every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So go ahead and register. And if you happen to miss the class for the 12th Wednesday, depending on when you watch this, just pay attention to my stories, or pay attention to the link in my bio, where I will always post the next upcoming class. All right. With that said, you all have a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.